As much as possible, I try to stay in a more of a text-oriented approach to my workflow. So I like to use VEX a lot. Personally, I just find it's faster, easier to do. But there was one area that I always found myself jumping into the attribute VOPs environment whenever I needed to use noise, because the noise interface there was really good. It was really quick and easy, but it wasn't text-based. And let me show you what I'm talking about here. So typically, I drop in, let's say, drop a grid here. Let's give it some divisions, and then I was doing the attribute VOP thing and finding I'd jump in here to do something very similar to this. This is a really common thing, is you'd say, let's drop a turbulent noise. I want it to be simplex because I just prefer simplex noise for most things, not all, but for most things. And then another typical thing is you'll do a fit range right after this. And let me just do a vector to float here. There it is. And then I want to do a multiply here. Okay, and hook this up and then plug this into CD. Okay, and you get something like this. I've turned off specular because I didn't want the shine, just FYI. Okay, and I would find myself doing this all the time. But I was like, I really want to be able to do this in VEX, because I've been doing almost any other kind of algorithmic kind of design in VEX recently. And so now what I have done is I dipped in to figure out what is the VEX behind this, because at the end of the day, this generates VEX code. And if you don't believe me, you can actually right click on your attribute VOP, go to VEX options and view the VEX code, okay? And I am not suggesting everyone write all this code every time you need to get a noise in VEX. What I'm suggesting is to create a recipe so you can do something like this. simplexNoise, I drop this down, and I've got the exact same. See, when I go over to the attribute VOP versus this VEX node, it is the exact same thing. I've got the exact same controls, the defaults. So if I go to the turbulent noise, the defaults, the frequency, the offset, amplitude, roughness, attenuation, turbulence, all here, as well as my ability to manipulate the source minimax of the fit range. I found myself doing this so often, I created a recipe. Now, what's behind this? Well, it's this small chunk of VEX code that I have written to make my life easier, and I put it into a recipe so that I can get quickly into noise manipulation, such that I start to create. Let's brighten this up, amplify that suck. So typical noise functionality, but I've done it through a VEX code here. It's these 2 lines of code. 3 lines of code gives me the equivalent to this. Okay, now, what I did to do this is I went into and I looked at that generated VEX code. So I went in here and I said, okay, how do I simplify this? I clearly do not want to write all this stuff. So it turns out that the special sauce is actually right here. And that's what I basically broke out into my own file. And I can show you what that looks like here. If I bring up Sublime and I go over to that file, I did this. I included voplib.h, which is in every Houdini installation. If you go into your wherever your Houdini is, you go into the Houdini, the VEX include directory, you'll find a voplib, and that's where these functions are defined. And I created my own interface. So you see simplexNoise. I created my 1D and 3D version, which, by the way, the only difference between 1D and 3D is the return value. The call is just a little bit different. And all I did was create a number of different overloads, essentially, of the same call, which ultimately call this function here. And that gives me the exact interface that you have in VOPland. All right. And it's so easy to do this. Now you just create this header file. You jam this into your header file. You put this somewhere on your disk, and you tell Houdini where to find that. And you just put that in the Houdini path environment variable. Or like I did, I created a package. Let's see here. I'll open up. If you go into the documents area, You go into Houdini, wherever your Houdini version is. I created a package. In my case, I called it arcanicom.json. And this is where I add my Arcanicom HDA and recipes, as well as a VEX dir is where I put my include paths. And so I added the OTLX scan here, and that's basically, it'll pick up any of your include files that you create. And that's it, right? So I'll put a little header file and put that up on my Gumroad that you can just grab. But I couldn't be, this is so simple. And for simplexNoise, I'm using this all the time now. And I'll probably build a couple others as I continue to use a couple other noises. Like I've been using curl noise quite a bit lately, and I'll probably do something similar. But I haven't seen anybody really pointing out actually how easy this is to get this going in VEX, such that I can then go change and use VEX to do everything I need to do. And at this point, I don't have any reason to jump into the attribute VOP land. And again, this isn't VEX is better than attribute VOPs. I just prefer the text-based approach. It's just a personal preference. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this. And if you're not a coder, this makes all kinds of sense and is absolutely a fantastic interface. But for me personally, I just prefer a text-based approach. Okay. So again, I'll put this down in the description where you can pull. I'll put a header file together for you. Let me know what you think.